Most people remember Caillou as a simple children's cartoon. The kid was a bald preschooler, 4 years old, still bald. The show taught gentle lessons in a calm, pastel-colored world, but when you look closer, certain details don't quite add up. You never see jobs, no one's working, names are never spoken, money is never explained. Where does it come from? And entire branches of the Caillou family tree appear to be missing. Tonight we ask the question no one else has dared to ask. What is Caillou hiding? Now before we continue, I want to make one clarification. And no, I'm not asking you to subscribe to ExpressVPN or sell you Raycon earbuds. I want to make it clear that this is not an iceberg video in the traditional sense. We are not ranking obscure trivia. We are not cataloging production facts or random other knowledge about this show that no one cares about. I don't have time for that. You don't have time to that. Let's get on with both our lives and let's just watch this video, which actually has the information you want to see. What we're doing is something I believe is far more dangerous. We're taking the show exactly as it presents itself and asking, what does that imply? We're not bringing any outside confirmations. We're not looking at behind-the-scenes interviews. No one wants to see that. We're not even going to bring in official explanation. We're just going to look at patterns and omissions, and we're going to draw natural conclusions for them. There are uncomfortable questions that emerge when you stop giving a children's show the benefit of the doubt. So rather than slowly descending layer by layer, I'm going to cut straight to the pressure points. But I can promise you that it's going to get more and more intense as we move on. Let's begin. Firstly, I learned a new fact about Caillou that I could not leave out. Caillou is Canadian. In fact, the series originates in Quebec, based on French-Canadian children's books. I had no idea of this. This kid is basically Montrealian. Bro's eating Vladimir Poutine for breakfast. To be fair, I should have seen this as his name has that sort of French vibe to it. Échouder le babon. This explains the slower pacing we see in the episodes. That gentler tone and extreme politeness that everybody has. You're not going to see any of that in America. This kid has no freedom. That's why he behaves the way he does. He lives under dictatorship. But this raises larger questions than the socio-political state of Caillou's culture. If this show is so grounded in realism, why does its world feel so strangely incomplete? Let me present to you the pizza shop problem.
Making pizzas, are we? Did you know that I once worked in a pizzeria?
Really? Wow!
You need a lot of practice before you can do this. You see, it's all in the wrist action.
At first glance, this detail appears harmless. In the episode Caillou the Chef, Caillou's father casually mentioned that he once worked in a pizza shop. This is notable for one reason. It is the only confirmed job ever referenced for either parent in Caillou. They don't have an office or a trade or profession. The only thing we know about for a fact is that there is pizza in the history of Caillou's dad. I want to ask the question, why this job? Food service is rarely portrayed in children's television unless it serves a narrative purpose, which you could argue in the episode Caillou the Chef, it does serve a narrative purpose. But doing so implies that Caillou's dad once worked long hours with low margin. This is a job you leave. It's not one that you can build a life around unless you own the place. This also raises more important questions. If this was his past, what replaced it? What does Caillou's dad do now? Where does the money come from? What is the financial status of Caillou's family? Caillou's father demonstrates an unusual level of competence while making the pizza, until he doesn't. But this is not a casual familiarity. His father clearly has practiced muscle memory here, which suggests two things. One, his father clearly spent a significant amount of time at this pizza shop job. And two, it was a long enough time to internalize the work. So why mention the job at all? Why give us one extremely specific detail and then permanently withhold everything else and never bring it up again? Could it be that this is the only part of Caillou's father's employment history that is safe to talk about? In every other episode of the show, Caillou's father is simply home. He's always there. He's available during weekdays, mornings, afternoons. We never see him taking work calls. We never hear him talking about deadlines. He never even looks exhausted. It's almost as if employment itself has been entirely removed from the Caillou narrative. This again begs the question, where does the money come from? Despite the absence of visible work, Caillou's family clearly lives comfortably. Bro's got a detached home. That in and of itself is an accomplishment. Have you seen Canada's housing market? They also have a well-maintained yard. Caillou has an abundance of toys. In fact, they're clearly lavish enough to go ahead and paint their house in exotic colors while they're at it. And there's 2 parents there with unlimited time. This level of stability requires income, vast amounts of it, not simply pizza shop level income. Again, we see no evidence of salaried employment. We don't see shift-based labor either, or freelance instability. This strongly suggests that Kai's family income is not tied to active labor in the traditional sense, which leaves us with only a few possibilities. It could be that Caillou's family lives off of investments, trusts, royalties, perhaps a large inheritance. Inheritance in particular explains several anomalies. Firstly, that would explain no visible work. It would explain the stable lifestyle. In fact, it would also explain no discussion of finances ever mentioned. They would clearly be doing well enough that they never even have to discuss it. But inheritance raises a new question. Inherited from whom? As you watch this show, you'll notice that only one side of Caillou's grandparents ever appears with any consistency. The other side is conspicuously absent. There's not even any mentions of them. We never see them. There's no visits or stories about them. An entire lineage, an entire side of the family is just gone. Could it be that this missing side of the family is also the source of the money? Families don't usually erase entire branches without reason. Common explanations would include estrangement, legal disputes, sudden death, or circumstances that make discussion inconvenient. Could it be that the missing grandparents are not absent because they are unimportant? Maybe they are too important. At this point, the pattern becomes almost difficult to ignore. We see a vague employment history, no visible labor, unexplained financial stability, and a missing lineage. Individually, these details mean nothing, but together, they start to form a question that I believe refuses to go away. What happened before Caillou was born? Let's consider a possibility. We have a family with unexplained income and a missing lineage, and a lifestyle that's seemingly built on privacy. These traits are not uncommon among families connected to extreme wealth. Some researchers have even asked, could Caillou be descended from a powerful tech dynasty? Figures such as Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank.
But how do I make money?
In fact, he's Canadian. Elon Musk, who also spent some time in Canada. Or perhaps Bill Gates. Maybe even there are ties to Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there's no evidence of this, but families of extreme wealth often avoid public records, shield their children, and limit exposure. Could Caillou's sheltered upbringing be less about parenting philosophy and more about protection? Could it be that Caillou's family is part of the Witness Protection Program? In fact, we never see them addressed by name. They're only ever referred to as Mommy and Daddy. Some external sources suggest their names may be Boris and Doris, but the show itself never confirms this, and more importantly, they never address each other by name. This is odd because names establish identity and history and paper trails. What if these names are intentionally avoided, specifically because they're in the Witness Protection Program? What if Mommy and Daddy are not nicknames, but functional designations? In fact, Caillou himself has no confirmed last name. When he goes to preschool, there's no roll call or documents or full name introductions. In the real world, surnames are unavoidable unless you are trying to not be identified. In the Witness Protection Program, people often have no last name, no job history, or limited extended family. They're in carefully controlled environments with extreme emotional stability. Witness protection families often relocate, which limits social exposure and shields children from adult conflict. But if this is true, what did they witness? And more importantly, who are they hiding from? When you take a look at Caillou's home, you'll find that there is hardly ever any conflict or arguments. In fact, most of the tension comes from Caillou himself. There is no adult frustration going on. This level of emotional regulation is incredibly unusual. Some trauma specialists suggest that families who have experienced severe events often overcorrect. They'll prioritize a calm environment and predictability. Is Caillou's peaceful home a sign of ideal parenting, or is it a response to something they are trying to desperately forget? All of this leads me to one final question. What if Caillou isn't simply a normal child, but an individual in the early stages of extraordinary power development? Some have even asked, could Caillou be a younger version of One Punch Man?
Is this Caillou? This is the little bald kid in the kid show that I hate.
At first glance, this seems absurd, but let's examine the similarities. Both Caillou and Saitama are bald. In One Punch Man, baldness is the result of overwhelming power and physical transcendence. In Caillou's case, the baldness appears before any training. Could this suggest that Caillou is not post-power, but pre-awakening? In One Punch Man, Saitama lives in a world that no longer poses a threat to him. His enemies fall in front of him, and obstacles collapse. In Caillou, something similar happens. Problems arise, but they never truly resist him. Emotional outbursts resolve situations, and the adults concede immediately. Reality itself seems to bend to Caillou's will. Could this be the result of latent, uncontrolled power? In One Punch Man, the world reacts oddly to Saitama. People underestimate him and respond unnaturally and fail to treat him like a normal person, which is similar to Caillou, where adults also behave strangely. They're calm to the point of artificiality. They rarely push back. They treat Caillou with exaggerated caution. Could this be instinctual behavior, an unconscious response to a being whose full power has not yet emerged? Powerful beings are often isolated for their own good. Caillou has limited social exposure. He lives in a highly controlled environment. He's shielded from conflict. Saitama, likewise, lives detached from society. He exists outside normal power structure, and he's bored because the world no longer challenges him. Could Caillou's parents be doing the only thing they can do? Containment. If One Punch Man represents a world that cannot withstand its strongest inhabitant, could Caillou represent the origin story? Before the training, before the awareness, before the first one punch. Could it be that Caillou's tantrums are not emotional failures, but in fact they are containment breaches? So we are left with a series of unanswered questions. We have a family with no visible employment, we have a missing lineage, names that are never spoken, an identity that is never completed. We have a child raised in a world without conflict, without resistance, and without history. Is Caillou the heir to a vast hidden fortune? Is his family protected because of something they witnessed or something they are? Is his reality carefully constructed to prevent him from asking the wrong questions too soon? And if Caillou's world feels incomplete, what has been removed? Because in real life, omissions are never accidental. They are deliberate, they are protective, and sometimes they are warning. So the question is no longer whether Caillou's world is unrealistic. The question is, who decides what Caillou is allowed to see? And what happens when he finally grows old enough to notice what's missing?